All right, listeners. Now is a great time to talk about a new partner of ours here on Acquired, Legora, the agentic operating system that is redefining how the world's best legal teams work.
Yep, it's sort of obvious that AI is going to completely change the legal industry. I bet most of you listening have dropped a contract into some sort of AI chatbot out there. Legora took that insight and asked the question, what if you really built something with that power from the ground up for the legal industry?
So the founders did exactly what great founders do, operate with obsessive customer focus. They embedded inside a massive law firm for months. They sat with the lawyers just watching how the work really gets done.
And that's how you get features that customers love, like tabular review, where you drop in a folder of hundreds of contracts and it pulls every key term into a grid a lawyer can actually work with. Legora's bet here is interesting. Since it lets each lawyer handle more complexity, any given person can increase the quality of their work and do higher value work. And this means that the pie can grow even as each individual task takes less time.
And they recently launched Legora Agent, offering greater intelligence and performance. The agent lets lawyers set an objective. Then it can handle the planning and the execution and delivery of the final product. Legal teams get to maintain full control and transparency since they're still involved where judgment is required.
And Legora works where you already work. You can use it within Microsoft Word while redlining or drafting. The early Legora numbers essentially speak for themselves. When they have a head-to-head pilot with their top competitor, they win 70% of the time. Legora now has over 100,000 lawyers on the platform from 1,200 legal teams in 50 countries. And crazily, they went from 1 million to 100 million in ARR in about 18 months.
Truly insane numbers. And that is the real test. Plenty of things demo well, but the question is whether a busy associate actually reaches for it during crunch time, or whether a partner trusts it before going into a conversation with a major client. If your legal team wants to check it out, whether you're a law firm or you're in-house at a company, you can learn more at legora.com/acquired and just tell them that Ben and David sent you.
Who got the truth? Is it you? Is it you? Is it you? Who got the truth now? Is it you? Is it you? Is it you? Sit me down, say it straight. Another story on the way. Who got the truth?
Welcome to episode 7 of Acquired. I'm Ben Gilbert.
I'm David Rosenthal.
And we're your hosts. Today we sit here on the eve of the announcement that Google is the most valuable company in the world to tell you about Google's acquisition.
Google announced that they were the most valuable company in the world?
What?
Google announced earnings, and
Oh, yeah.
people are speculating that it might. I haven't
when it opens
checked the
tomorrow,
price.
is that what's
I
going
haven't
on?
checked the stock price, but that Google's market cap might pass Apple's tomorrow.
Ah, gotcha. So,
Mr. Market will tell.
yeah, in steep contrast to what we normally do on this show, that is just conjecture and hypothesizing.
We never conjecture on this show.
We're going to talk about kind of an older acquisition when you look at the companies that we've looked at so far. Google acquiring YouTube. David, why don't you take it away with acquisition history and facts?
Will do. So YouTube, this is a big one. YouTube was founded early 2005 by 2 former engineers and 1 former designer from PayPal. Part of the much ballyhooed PayPal mafia. And interestingly, we'll get more into this later. YouTube was one of the very first investments at Sequoia by another member of the PayPal mafia, Roelof Botha. I just keep it in the family. So it was founded in early 2005, and then in November of 2005, Sequoia and Roelof come in and they lead a $3.5 million Series A, and then a few months later, it was very early growth days, having just released the product when Sequoia leads the Series A. A few months later, in December of 2005, SNL, remember the Lonely Island days on SNL, the skit Lazy Sunday comes out, And
Wait, so it only took us 7 episodes to talk about Andy Samberg here on Acquired.
Ironic, I know.
Editor's note, David looks like Andy Samberg. There should be no inside jokes in podcasting.
Lazy Sunday comes out, and a whole bunch of people like videoed their TVs and post it to YouTube. And I don't know if this was in aggregate or just one of the versions of the clips of this clip of Lazy Sunday generates 7 million views on YouTube, which was huge. I mean, like there were only 100,000 people on the site before then.
Yeah, I think even at acquisition, they had an audience of 72.1 million, but they were reporting 19.1 monthly active users. So, I mean, to get that kind of view count that early, and that was even, a year
I'm sure it was a lot of college kids like me watching it over and over and over again.
Well, the amazing thing is thinking about watching it on, people filming their TVs like that. That's like what Vines look like now.
Yeah.
You talk about a kind of the history rewriting itself.
So on the back of Lazy Sunday, among other viral hits, April 2006, the company raises an $8 million Series B, also from Sequoia with Artist Ventures, which I believe led the round. And by the summer of 2006, YouTube has grown in July to about 100 million video views a day, which is pretty incredible. And then and a whole bunch of problems that arose with that, which we'll get into in a minute. But very shortly after, October 9th, 2006, Google announces that they are going to purchase YouTube for $1.65 billion.
Incredible. I mean, this is just over a year and a half after the founding of the company, literally in a garage. They'd only raised $11.5 million in venture capital, so the multiple $11.5 million to $1.65 billion. That's what 120xing.
Pretty incredible. I mean, this kind of stuff, and this was 2006. This stuff didn't happen in 2006. I mean, after the internet bubble, the lingering after effects are still reverberating through the valley even a few years later. And the idea that a company would go from founding to actually being sold to a real company, Google, not just, going public with funny money in 18 months for over $1.5 billion. I mean, it was crazy. Even Instagram that we talked about on one of our first episode was such a splash of $1 billion.
Yeah, insane.
So Google acquisition closes by December of 2006. In March of 2007, Viacom files a $1 billion lawsuit against YouTube, accusing the company, the directors, and I can't remember if Google was named in the suit or not, of knowingly and blatantly violating copyright laws and posting material like SNL is an NBC property, not a Viacom property, but like Lazy Sunday, knowingly allowing it to persist on the site, even though YouTube didn't have the copyright. So that began this protracted battle over content rights on YouTube that really was only finally resolved in 2014, 7 years later. It was a whole series of dismissals and appeals and judgments, and then finally the Viacom and Google settled in 2014. It's hard to believe.
It is.
Okay, so this lawsuit happens, but which is, we'll talk about in and of itself, but there's this amazing byproduct of the lawsuit, which is the disclosure process. And we get to see, it's just in the public domain, all of this incredible material and testimony about YouTube, about Sequoia's investment in YouTube, about the acquisition. So you can find this online, and we'll link to it in the show notes. As part of the discovery process, Sequoia and Roloff's investment memo for the Series A of YouTube is available, and it's a really incredible document.
It is incredibly fun to read. I mean, I was just looking over it preparing for this show, and the key risks that they identify in here could not be more candid and could not be more real of concerns. I mean, we're going to talk about this later in evaluating the acquisition and where the world is today and all that. But, key risks, competition / defensibility. Like here we are, 10 years after the acquisition, and Facebook is stealing video share revenue.
And what I thought was really interesting, and we'll talk more about this throughout the show, and I think especially in the themes. But in the memo, Roloff and Sequoia, when addressing competition and defensibility, they say the team will need to remain laser focused on improving the user experience, which isn't what you would really expect when you think about defensibility. Like nowhere in this memo does it talk about network effects. And YouTube is, on the surface, you would think network effects, defensibility through having all the content, which leads to all the viewers, which gets more content. But no, they're actually focused on improving the user experience.
And I mean, that's not exactly how I would describe YouTube today. Like when I think about the things that make YouTube great, it has pretty much zero to do with the user experience of YouTube.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, YouTube has actually, I think, really failed. Like, who goes to youtube.com and then discovers something or searches for something on YouTube? No, you come through other channels and then you leave.
Yeah, I'm often, I want to say this for later, but I think it's worth talking about now. I'm a little bit bearish on YouTube, primarily because it's not a destination site. They are reliant on traffic from other channels, and those other channels, namely Facebook, where people go first to decide what they're going to be looking at, are having their own platforms and actively pulling people onto those platforms.
And can drive traffic.
So YouTube is effectively, a super fancy CDN at this point. They're a place where the videos get hosted, where people don't necessarily rely on going to YouTube for discovery or being told what they should watch, or it's just uninteresting.
Hosting that YouTube and Google pay for.
Yeah, it's free hosting, and if there was a better place, I think people would easily throw it up on that better place.
All right, listeners, now is a great time to tell you about a longtime friend of the show, Vanta. AI has scrambled the whole security picture. It used to be that you proved that you were secure once a year, an audit or a static PDF, then everyone would nod and you're done. But in an AI-first world, that doesn't hold up anymore.
Yep, your risk surface changes every week now. A vendor turns on an AI feature or someone writes in a new model without telling IT, and your posture is different than it was last week, let alone at your last audit. Vanta's own research found that around 70% of companies have this quote-unquote shadow AI running with no security review at all.
Right. And that's where Vanta comes in. They're the leading agentic trust platform, meaning they've built the thing that closes the gap. And the way that they close that gap is Vanta Agent. Think of it as a GRC engineer, that's governance, risk, and compliance, except that it's software and it doesn't sleep. It finds the issues, drafts the fixes, and cuts the time that you'd spend on vendor assessments in half.
In half! Which is exactly why more than 16,000 companies today run on Vanta. Companies like Ramp, Cursor, and Snowflake all stay audit ready and catch the risks that crop up between audits across every vendor, every AI tool, the whole environment.
And that's the real value. Trust has to be continuous now, which is why Vanta automates your security, your compliance, and the work to earn and prove trust. We're huge fans of Vanta over here, and literally hundreds of acquired listeners have become Vanta customers at their companies over the years. So you can get $1,000 off Vanta at vanta.com/acquired. That's VANTA.com/acquired for $1,000 off, and just tell them that Ben and David sent you.
So another thing that's really interesting about this lawsuit is there's a bunch of testimony from Eric Schmidt, who was then the CEO of Google, and as part of the lawsuit. And he is interesting. He testified that he told Google's board in the days leading up to the acquisition and as they were working on it, that he thought YouTube was worth about 600 to 700 million. And that as the deal progressed, Google decided that it had to pay more, literally $1 billion more, to keep it from competitors. And that YouTube had indicated to Google that, quote, had indicated to us that they would be sold, is what Eric says. Which is super interesting because, there's these content rights issues swirling around the company. There's the massive hosting fees that they were paying at the time and are still continuing to pay. And yet the growth was explosive. And it's interesting that they essentially put themselves up for sale. And that we have this testimony here, which is really cool.
Well, do you think, I mean, one way that I would interpret that is we are going to be sold is we are going to go out of business unless we have someone that is financing all these lawsuits. Like, we have no option.
Well, that's what Viacom argued.
Yeah.
And ultimately lost, we should say. But yeah, super interesting. You've got this property, this product that is clearly, incredible product market fit, growing like, I don't know anything. I think nothing that the internet had ever seen until that point. I mean, maybe I guess Facebook existed then, so it was probably growing at a similar rate. And yet had these massive existential questions that, even though it was a huge price, leads them to actively try and sell the company only 18 months in.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about the sale too, it's almost entirely stock. It was only $15 million in cash and the rest in stock. David, if you're Google, why do you do such a stock-heavy transaction there?
Well, I don't know at the time. I mean, I don't know how much cash Google had on hand. Presumably a lot, but this was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And whether they could, whether their treasury could, how much cash they had on hand and how much cash of that was available and on U.S. soil and not in.
Right, that's true. Yeah, maybe they had no choice.
Yeah.
But to me, I mean, like, looking at that, Google was only going to go up. And it's easy to say that now, looking at the skyrocketing that it's done. But if you're, Larry Page, you got to be optimistic there, and you got to be able to see that your company's only going to get more valuable. It'd be interesting to go back actually and look at all these shares now and do the math and see what's the current value of that.
It would also be interesting to look at, we've mentioned Sequoia a lot in this show, both in the past and this episode, but in particular because of this investment memo. Sequoia is one of the largest shareholders in Google, and I don't know if they were still shareholders at that time, but they have a history of keeping their public shareholdings, which would be very interesting that the largest investor in YouTube might also have been the largest or one of the largest shareholders in Google at the time of this acquisition.
Interesting indeed. Okay, so
just to wrap up, so what happened next? 2006, Time Magazine names, quote, you person of the year, but the cover is YouTube, and the theme of you and user-generated content, and the growth just continues on the product side. I mean, by May of 2010, so 4 years later, less than 4 years later, YouTube is up to 14 billion video views a month from 100 million 4 years earlier. By 2013, YouTube has 1 billion monthly unique viewers, visitors, and the growth has just continued since then.
Okay, cool. So I've heard you say a lot about views and viewers. Got to feed my family.
Yeah.
How do you feel about YouTube as a business?
Well, here's what's really interesting, and that's happened since then, especially, we've done our episode on Twitch. Netflix, has also been built. Netflix as a digital streaming service has been built during this same time.
Amazon stood up something from scratch in that time.
Yep. And YouTube is really one of the few, if maybe only, major video business, YouTube and Facebook, that are ad supported now. And I wonder if it's kind of been proven that direct payments are a better model for video on the internet. Now, and obviously Twitch has advertising, but as we talked about, I think most of the dollars flowing through Twitch are in the form of subscriptions.
Yeah, so you touched on two really interesting things there. One, in thinking about YouTube as a profitable business, I think last year, there's not a lot of good stats on this sense, but in February of 2014, they were doing about $4 billion in revenue, but were pretty flat. I mean, they I guess not flat as much as they were break-even business.
$4 billion in revenue, growing fast, but after payments to content creators and hosting costs and ad sales costs and all associated stuff, about a break-even business, zero profit.
And so in the last year, estimates that they are a $5 billion business, but again, still not a profitable one. The interesting thing to think about there is, what is their average revenue per user? And the information's pretty sparse on this, but I think the latest numbers around kind of Facebook and Twitter are like somewhere in the $7 to $9 range for those social services that are ad supported. It's probably in that $7-8 range, maybe a little bit less because it's the ad unit.
I would bet probably less, because if in 2013 they had 1 billion unique visitors, and if say they made 5 billion in revenue last year, imagine that number of uniques has only gone up since 2013. So you're talking about less than $5 per user.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can see why YouTube Red is a thing. So YouTube Red is a service they announced last year that you can pay $10 and get ad-free YouTube, and it's their sort of answer for how do you get YouTube, the music that is on YouTube as sort of a streaming service for when you're not actively watching a video, you don't want the ad interruptions, all that. So that's a $10 a month service. On the one hand, and I'm going to call this short-sighted, but on the one hand, they need to do that to make it a profitable business. I mean, it's been a 10-year experiment here since the acquisition, and there's a lot of other ancillary benefits that Google gets out of having YouTube, but as the core business, not hugely profitable or profitable at all. So, maybe moving to this other model gives them, more cash flows where they're able to be a profitable business. On the other hand, it flies directly in the face of YouTube as an ad platform. And they're getting their highest value users, which are the people that the advertisers actually want to reach, to not see the ads. And to do brand advertising, you need enormous scale. I mean, Facebook and YouTube are two of the only properties in the world that can do it. And if YouTube starts dwindling the population of people, particularly on the most affluent end that are actually seeing ads, they become a less valuable ad platform. So what we're seeing here as Google transitions to trying to make YouTube a profitable business with YouTube Red is potentially a huge shift in the entire strategy of what YouTube as a business is.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Video, as incredibly compelling as it is, and as large as it's become on the internet, mostly thanks to YouTube and all of these services, Facebook video and Twitch, and others that have sprung up in its wake, it fundamentally, though, does have a different cost structure than other types of content on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, if you just compare this to Instagram alone, acquired for $1 billion, and then I think they projected it at making $3 billion this year.
Well, and the cost structure is different on two fronts. One, there's the hosting and then the delivery of the video, which costs a lot more than text or static photos. But two is the content payments. And YouTube has really been aggressively investing in this, and it's not just payments to the professional media organizations of the world. It's payments out to content partners that are, on Instagram, those people just post their content, or Snapchat, they're posting for free.
For free.
And
on
YouTube's paying them.
The YouTube's splitting 55% of their ad revenue out and paying it out to those producers.
And we know on Twitch, lots of the most popular streamers have talked about how YouTube has approached them and offered them large payments, very large payments, to stream on YouTube, and they're streaming for free on Twitch.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, the whole Twitch live streaming thing is interesting in itself, but even the kind of stored archive video that YouTube is that's their bread and butter. I mean, Facebook has a product that is pulling people away in huge numbers because that's everyone's first step. And I think that the stat that I recently saw was 70% of Facebook videos are uploaded natively. That used to be people embedding YouTube videos, and it's just been this massive, massive shift.
Yeah, pretty incredible. Well, I feel like we should move on to acquisition category, but before we do, one more quick aside. that I want to throw in. This is a particularly fun episode because my very first job interview, or interview for my very first job when I worked at UBS in investment banking after college, I was interviewing in January 2007. And this acquisition had just been announced, and I did this as a case study in my interview. I thought, man, this was going to be like the best job ever. I could talk about like internet company strategy and media, and like this would be awesome. And then I learned investment banking was actually something very different. But
but now you get to do a podcast.
Now I get to do a podcast about it.
I also think right before we move on, I didn't fully. I guess I want to come around at that last point. Calling it short-sighted. That's assuming that they are sticking with being an ad platform, and particularly a brand advertising platform. If there is some grander plan, I think it's short-sighted if that's the current business. If there is a grander plan to move to more of a Spotify type subscription business, which we'll see if they can, weather that storm of the crazy margins that you have to pay out to content producers at that point. But it's short-sighted in that they maintain that same advertising platform strategy.
All right, listeners, now is a great time to thank our longtime friend of the show, ServiceNow. If you are running a large enterprise, AI agents are likely spread across every team, and deploying them is no longer the hard part.
Yeah. The hard part is knowing what permissions they have, what employees are using them for, or what decisions AI is making. AI security for an enterprise at scale is not a small concern. Like, the risks are real.
Exactly. And the challenge with AI is governing it, securing it, measuring it, and making sure that it actually delivers value. That is why ServiceNow built the AI Control Tower.
Yep. AI Control Tower gives enterprises a single place to see, manage, govern, and optimize AI across the entire business. And it works with any AI, not just theirs. Every device on your network, every permission across every system, every AI agent visible and secure in one place.
And ServiceNow can do this because they've spent more than 20 years building the operational backbone of the enterprise, the workflows, governance, approvals, security controls, and institutional knowledge that power how work actually gets done across IT, HR, customer service, finance, and security.
ServiceNow already runs more than 100 billion workflows annually and trillions of transactions for more than 85% of the Fortune 500. So when companies need a place to govern AI at enterprise scale, they're building on a platform at the center of how their business already operates.
And in a future that isn't going to be one AI, it's going to be thousands of AI agents working across every function of the company. But the question is, who's managing them all?
So if you're trying to turn AI ambition into real business outcomes and make it work safely, securely, at scale, go check out servicenow.com/acquired and tell them that Ben and David sent you.
Okay, acquisition category. David, you want to take it?
Yeah, so I think the obvious one here is product. As a reminder, our self-identified major categories are people, technology, product, business line, and other. But I think I think I'm actually going to go with other on this one. And I think it's a little bit what you were talking about just now, Ben. But I'm not unique in coming up with this, and I was inspired by a few articles that I read in preparing for this show, but people have been talking for years now about YouTube as Google's, quote, loss leader. And I think that's an interesting way to look at it because if you think about Google as an ad sales machine, which it is, much of it self-serve, but a lot of it, they have a huge ad sales force. And you think of YouTube as a part of the overall portfolio of products that Google's ad sales team is selling, even if the business itself isn't profitable as a business, and the product has huge problems. But it's really enabled Google to have multiple types. If you think about their core search advertising and AdWords, and then the display network that they built up following the DoubleClick acquisition, and then now with video and YouTube. I think it's an interesting, like I said, quote, loss leader product for Google.
Yeah, I actually was going to go with other also, but for a totally different reason. They're able to bring data that they're getting from the videos that people are uploading and watching into the Google search algorithm on all media types. And I think that, sure, they could do what they're doing with Twitter now and embed kind of a passed along search to YouTube and return the first couple of videos. But what they're doing with the content on YouTube and the analytics and metrics of people watching these videos and understanding, the topical things that are going on in each of these videos is so much deeper than anything they'd be able to get with YouTube as an external company. So, again, probably primarily the product. But I think other for both of those two reasons.
And that also gets to something I want to talk about in a minute, which is embeds. But we'll get there in a minute.
One point I want to make here. So Google had been playing with a product for a few years called Google Video Search before they acquired YouTube. And interestingly enough, they actually left it running for like a year or two after the acquisition in its exact same form, where you could actually upload videos to Google Video, and then left it up for much longer.
And it's interesting. Schmidt actually talks about this in his testimony, saying that one of the reasons that they were so compelled to pursue YouTube was that it was clear that YouTube was growing way faster and had way better engagement than Google Video.
Yeah, so what were they doing wrong? I mean, why did they need YouTube, and why couldn't they do it with Google Video? Where did they fail there?
I don't know. This is a really interesting question. Part of me wonders if it is kind of related to the Lonely Island, Lazy Sunday. Like, it kind of just got virality and it started taking off. And I mean, I remember I was in college, when this was happening, and one day in, 2006, all of a sudden everybody on campus was watching YouTube.
So do you think, that's kind of interesting to think about, that YouTube did better than Google Video because YouTube, by the nature of being a scrappy startup, was able to basically acquire a bunch of debt in the form of lawsuits because they were doing things like, letting people upload all these illegal videos, primarily because they didn't have great technology to filter it out and really no means to, but also that was the thing that sort of got their flywheel going. Yeah. And once it was in motion, they could do all sorts of things to sort of pay down that debt later on, but fundamentally they had the users and they had content flowing in.
I mean, I think it's it would be I think it would be probably wrong and at least unclear to say that part of YouTube's strategy was to illegally post content that they didn't have access to. I mean, this is what the whole lawsuit was about, and YouTube won the lawsuit, so legally,
so we
the
can
courts
say
have decided.
unequivocally that
according to the courts. But I think it's unclear, and we work with startups. Things are, you don't really have a good handle on what's going on in the early days, and people use your platform for what they use it for. But I think it does illustrate, the scrappiness, the the memorableness of YouTube, and the idea that could plant in your brain as a concept of, so many of these things I want to talk about when we get to tech themes, like streaming. That was not a concept that existed before YouTube, really.
Yeah, just talk to Justin Kahn. No one wanted to watch.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the live streaming that we think of now, but even just streaming media. I mean, Real Networks was a thing, obviously, and we're here in Seattle, but most, before YouTube, and broadband penetration wasn't the, basically 100% that it is now. People downloaded content and watched videos that they had stored on their hard drives, or listened to music or podcast. Podcasts originally were downloaded into iTunes, right? The idea that you would stream something live.
You have to put it on your iPod with USB so you can listen to it.
Yeah, exactly, right? I'm sure that's what all of our listeners are doing.
Yeah, 12 years later, and the medium is just barely taking off because...
Yeah. But think about it, YouTube was really able to popularize this, and then the other piece of it, I think, is embeds, which I want to talk about in a minute. YouTube could benefit from this amazing service that it offered that clearly millions and millions and now billions of people love, which is watching hosted video on the internet. But you didn't have to go to youtube.com. You had to go to google.com/videos to discover and watch.
Yeah, it's true, and it wasn't
Google
clear.
Videos.
Yeah, I remember thinking what videos would I have that I even? It's like a naming thing. Oh man, what videos would I have that I want to upload to Google Video? I don't know, but it like requires some weird creativity that I don't or
Yeah.
didn't or
But
wouldn't
you
have.
have
But
a
it's
personal
like YouTube,
blog.
like,
or-
I know what this is. Like, it's videos of stuff that I do.
Yep. Or you have, your own website about personal blog or whatever, and you want to embed a video in there. Yeah, you do that. And then, if a user double clicks on it, they go to YouTube and then they learn about YouTube and they say, oh, maybe I want to host my videos there. Or, wow, look at that Lazy Sunday sketch.
Yeah. I have one more allegory that I want to make. I was thinking about sort of the debt you acquire in doing things that are like shady, because later on it's going to be an untouchable flywheel that you've got so much cash that it doesn't matter and you can deal with it. There's actually two things that just came to mind. One is LinkedIn just lost that lawsuit where the thing that they were doing that we all hate and that everybody notoriously rips on them for is like somehow they can never stop emailing me. And they've been incredibly invasive in the inbox, and they took all my contacts and they invited them all to LinkedIn for me. And that was user hostile and illegal. And they, years and years and years later, now finally got hit with the penalty that was like, I don't know, it was in the neighborhood of like $100 million. And the value that they gained from that in the early days and all that lock-in is way more. But, the horse is way out of the barn. Like, the race is over.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, I don't think either of us is saying we endorse, either that we endorse this or that I think a lot of these tech companies like explicitly are thinking in this Machiavellian way. But think about, think about Uber and Airbnb, right? Like Airbnb, they helped bootstrap their supply side network with posting to Craigslist. Was that, that was against Craigslist terms of service? Was that, evil and Machiavellian of them? Like, I don't know. They probably didn't think about it that much. They were probably just trying to grow and not die and stop selling cereal, right? Like,
yeah. There's one more insanely good one that I heard recently it's quite a bit older. Microsoft apparently had this practice where they would sell you the rights to use MS-DOS, but it didn't matter whether you actually put MS-DOS on that computer or not. You were charged as a Microsoft customer for the number of CPUs that you shipped, period, no matter if they had DOS on them or not. And that did an incredible thing because that, the companies then are thinking like, well, it doesn't matter if we put this on or not, we're going to get charged for it. So every PC leaving the door of the factory had MS-DOS on it. And then once Microsoft had an alleged monopoly on the entire computing industry, then the Department of Justice comes back and says, well, that particular sales tactic is illegal. But again, years too late.
In startups, when you're trying to survive and grow, people say this, but this is it in practice. Unfair advantages. If you don't have one, somebody else does. And, YouTube had an unfair advantage over Google Video.
Yep.
Okay. I think we've kind of covered what would have happened otherwise. Like, there was a massive problem looming for YouTube.
Someone else would have picked him up, or they would have
gone bankrupt. So yeah, tech themes. We've also covered a bunch of these, but I pulled three. I have a couple others, but I pulled three out of the Sequoia memo that I thought were that YouTube really illustrated that they identified. One, user generated content. You had this kind of wave that started with blogging, with Blogger in the sort of early 2000s, and then it moved into photos. You had Photo Bucket, Shutterfly, and MySpace, and then early Facebook popping up of people starting to get this concept of sharing photos. And then you had podcasting taking off, and you had audio, and it was kind of Sequoia loves these wave analogies, but you can read the memo and it's just there in black and white. Video is the next and potentially biggest piece of this wave that's coming. So that's one. Two, continued broadband adoption. I mean, this would not have been possible without broadband. And then three, the quote is wide proliferation of inexpensive video capture devices. What was happening in 2005, 2006 was you had like flip cam.
Flip video, man. That went so well with Cisco.
Yeah. And you had digital cameras, still cameras shipping with video modes. And this was new. And then shortly thereafter, smartphones happened.
Yeah, I mean, you think about when this acquisition happened, was it like October of
2006?
Yeah, I mean, not even a year before the iPhone.
Yep. All of these things that all combined to, in this inferno to create the opportunity for YouTube.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. I mean, I've been kind of ripping Google the whole time here, and will continue to. But they made a big bet that people would move from watching their televisions to watching video online. And we weren't calling it cord cutting then, and we didn't know that we'd have these Netflix-like subscriptions and things like that. But they were definitely making the bet that video on the internet is the future of people's attention. And they were absolutely right about that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have cable. Do you have cable?
Nope. Not in my adult life.
Yep, me neither. I think it's time for conclusion.
Yeah. It's interesting. The way that I sort of want to think about this is, what else could Google have done if they wanted to capitalize on the trends we've been talking about? Particularly the one that I was thinking of is video on the internet is the place where people's attention will be. And as someone who, as a company that captures value from being somewhere in the value chain of people's attention and where they spend their time, primarily in the form of seeking out information, Google was making a defensive move that if that's how people are spending time in the future, then we need to be able to put advertising in front of them on that during that time to monetize it. So what else could they have done? Netflix wasn't really a business yet that looked anything like this. That would have been sort of a silly acquisition. They were trying with Google Video and clearly couldn't do it internally. And it feels like a rebooted effort there wouldn't have necessarily been as fruitful as this acquisition. I don't know that they had a lot of other ways to capitalize on this wave.
Yeah, I like this. And think about both then and today. What percentage of Google searches end in YouTube? I would imagine a pretty significant percentage.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
And if Google were sending, I don't know, I'm going to pick a number out of thin air, but 10%, 15% of Google searches, I think feels reasonable to me, end up in a YouTube link. And if Google were sending 10 to 15% of its traffic to a non-Google property, I mean, I guess it kind of does that with like Amazon.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Is that bad for Google's business I guess it's bad if someone gets big enough so that they actually become a destination site where you go right to that homepage instead of using Google to search for it or Facebook to discover it through what your friends and Facebook are surfacing to you, which are basically the two ways that people find things on the internet right now.
Yep.
Or
they search on Amazon.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I even probably search products on Google that I know will come up on Amazon first, and I freaking have an Amazon Smile button in my bookmarks bar so that I always know to go there so that code.org gets the money. But I always forget to do it because I end up just searching for the product in Google because I know Amazon's going to be the first thing anyway. So Google is my front door when I know what I want, and Facebook is my front door when I don't know what I want.
It's so big-hearted of you and such a fail.
I try. What was the point I was going to make there? That is okay. If it actually, let's go work off the hypothesis that a huge chunk of the traffic passing through Google goes to a single site instead of an aggregated bunch of little sites. That should be a problem because then in sort of a like Porter's Five Forces way, that business gets power over Google, and then people start going directly to that thing, and they don't need like the retailer of Google anymore, and they can just get their material directly from YouTube. YouTube has been owned by Google for 10 years, and they still can't manage to make youtube.com/ a destination site. Like, I don't know that actually would have been threatening to their business.
Yeah. On the other hand, you could argue that Google really had no motivation to invest in doing so. And had YouTube remained independent, which, as we kind of established, was impossible.
Yeah.
But let's imagine they could have. Would product-oriented founders have led that company to, something that looks like Twitch. And what's going to happen to Twitch in the next 10 years?
Yeah, that's super interesting too. So I'm going to render my conclusion. It's a C.
Wow. Is that our lowest grade yet?
Certainly mine.
What did we give Siri? I don't remember.
It's like a B minus.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Okay, so for me, gosh, part of me really wants to split this into two pieces. And so I think I'm going to do that and give a grade for each, but we have to have just one grade, so I'm going to ultimately render a final grade.
50% your show, you do what you want.
Yeah, right. Well, thanks, Ben. I really appreciate the trust here. So I think as I'm going to take first as a business, YouTube, unfortunately, I don't think has been a particularly good business. As we've established, we're 10 plus years into the company and revenues are great, but profits are basically zero. And maybe there are things that, they can invest in to change that over time, or Google could have done differently. But, a $5 billion revenue business with a $0 margin is not a great business, in my view.
Fine, you start one.
Yeah, right. Hey, I'm a VC. My job is to judge other people's businesses, not to, do the hard work of actually building them. It's great. So, on the business side, I think this is I don't know, C minus maybe. I mean, yeah, you're right. Like, I can't build a $5 billion business. Like, it's freaking hard, but.
And that 1.65 billion is just the beginning. I mean, think about the operational cost of pouring more money into this business over the years,
and people and content investments and all that. But I just don't, it's not a great business by great business standards. Then I think the other lens I want to look at this through is the product lens. And this one's super interesting because YouTube is not a great product either. It's really crappy in a lot of ways. As we've been discussing. I mean, maybe folks out there do, but Ben and I don't go to youtube.com very often. I mean, I probably do occasionally, but only if I'm looking for a very, very specific thing. And it's still kind of ugly, the site, and they've totally missed out on innovations like chat. And
I don't think I've ever opened the app directly. I've only ever been kicked into it. We didn't even talk about mobile, but God.
Yeah, right. It took them forever to figure that out, and they're kind of okay now. But just on the pure innovation side, I mean, and I've talked about this already, the concept of streaming media, and yes, it existed with real networks and others before YouTube, but really working with video and working at scale, it changed the world, right? And then the second one being embeds. And embeds is a double-edged sword because as we're talking, as we've talked about, when you can embed your content on somebody else's, on other people's properties, why do they go to your property? But, as a concept, it's pretty amazing.
It's awesome. As a site owner, I don't have to host and figure out the codec and the delivery mechanism for all my own videos.
Right. And you did, I mean, it upgraded the internet. YouTube upgraded the internet. Yep. And I don't think that's an exaggeration.
Yeah. It's an infrastructure layer that didn't previously exist and then was just totally off the shelf. Oh yeah. I'll just put my YouTube video in that blog post.
Yeah. So, and for these,
not to mention to your first point, when it changed the world and there's a whole category of people that are YouTubers that are making a living doing that. And a whole, generation of people that know those people as their celebrities.
Yeah.
I mean, this is
PewDiePie.
The cheesiest thing, but it totally, totally democratized video creation and becoming a star.
Yeah. And, and for that reason, I think this product side is really hard. It's been really disappointing and a big failure on several product fronts. However, on the core things that it has just knocked it out of the park. So I give it an A minus on the product side. Overall, I'm going to mash this up into a B for Google because I think, I could be wrong, but I think if you asked Larry and Sergey and Eric if they could go back to 2006 and would they spend $1.65 billion for YouTube, I think they would do that all day, every day.
Yeah, I mean, also, like, just on their personalities, right? Like, I'm not going to call it a moonshot, but it sort of falls in the vein of, like, what if anybody could make movies and then anybody in the world could watch them? And, like, this idea was not as fathomable in 2002 and obvious as it is today, right? Like, the world a couple of years before YouTube compared to the world now, it sort of does look like a crazy moonshot. And if they can do that and it doesn't at least cost money to run, it's a good thing.
There we are.
Cool. Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.
Who got the truth? Is it you? Is it you? Is it you? Who got the truth now? Huh?
All right, listeners, now is a great time to talk about one of our favorite companies, StatSig.
Yes, long-time acquired partner. There is a reason why the best product teams at companies like OpenAI and Notion, Atlassian, Figma, Rippling, Brex, and more rely on StatSig, whether they are iterating on their core product features or shipping AI-powered experiences at scale.
Yep. In the crazy speed of today's AI world, shipping fast is just table stakes now. It's basically trivial to build and deploy your app constantly. The real advantage is how quickly you learn what changes actually created value for customers and how fast you can use that signal to guide what you ship next. Whether it's a feature tweak, a pricing change, a performance improvement, or an AI update like a model change or prompt adjustment, they're not relying on instinct. They're measuring what actually moved engagement, retention, and ultimately revenue. And as more teams build with AI, that learning loop becomes even more important. Building with LLMs introduces non-determinism into your product experience. The same input doesn't always produce the same output, and behavior can shift in subtle ways in real-world use.
So doing offline evals will give you part of the picture, but you can really only understand the impact once your product is live with real users, and then you can measure how their behavior actually changes. It's very different than the way that you would ship features in a pre-AI world where you knew exactly what the software was going to do in production.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is where StatSig comes in. It brings experimentation, feature flags, and product analytics into one unified system so teams can ship safely, test rigorously, and directly link what they changed to how users actually behaved. The result is a tighter feedback loop and learning that compounds over time, so you don't just ship more, you ship better.
So if you want to make learning your competitive advantage, whether you're building new AI experiences or just evolving your existing core product, go to statsig.com/acquired to get started.